Welcome, everyone. So glad you made it on this rainy and slightly chilly day, right? It was interesting coming down from Evergreen. I felt like I was going into Seattle at about Red Rocks. It was pretty amazing. But anyway, if you're online or if you're here for the first time or if you're returning, we really want you to know this. We're here to remind you of your magnificence, to help you awake to all the wonder that you are. We long to show you all the joy you're worthy of. We're here to remind you how much you're truly loved. Wonderful song by David Alt. So glad that we get to use that. Now I'm going to move into the chant that we have been doing. But before we do that, I want to talk about that it is, we are having masks until the end of this month, for sure, in the sanctuary. So appreciate that. And we're so happy to have Reverend Masando back, and we have a special guest joining us later on as well. Carolyn, one of my students, is going to sing a little bit later. Carolyn Torf, we're so excited about that. And we're going to go to this now. All right. Oh, Mother God, flowing through our hearts, we give thanks for the bread of our lives, for the hands in the earth and the fruit of your womb. Oh, Mother God, blessed be. Oh, Mother God, blessed be. Oh, Mother God, thank you for this day, for the love that you wash over me, and this joy in my heart I will share with the world. Oh, Mother God, blessed be. Oh, Mother God, blessed be. And what I want you to know is that we are a radically inclusive congregation and center, and I want you to know that no matter who you are and what path you're on, we welcome all people, all genders, gender identities, all relational orientations, and as I said, wherever you are on your path, you are blessed, you are loved, you are lovable, and you are welcome here. Now we're going to move into the announcements. Okay, so we have several things going on, and we've got the gong bath coming up the next two, the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month. So this month it's on June 8th and June 22nd, or next month I should say, since we're still in May. So that's a really good one. And then we also have the Oracle Deck and Listening class coming up that both David and Rick are going to be teaching on June 12th from 10 until noon. And that very same day, we are starting our concerts in the courtyard. And that will be on June 12th as well. We've got one group coming at 3 o'clock. It's a local school here that's going to have students do a little recital. And then we have Grace and Blue Inc. from 4 to 6. All right, and then I ran out of time to make a new slide. I drove back from Wyoming last night, 300 miles. So anyway, I am happy to announce that we've got a big celebration going on that was talked about in the newsletter as well. But 4th of July is going to be a great service, and we are also shifting to a noontime service. So we're switching to later, so make sure that you tell all your friends. And all of this is in the newsletter, and we can access any of that at any time and sign up for any of the classes. So we appreciate that very much. And now it is my honor to introduce our prayer chaplain today, and that's Opal.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Unity on the Avenue. I would like to start off by reading our statement of faith. There is one power and one presence in the universe and in my life, God the good, omnipotent. Our prayer today is a prayer to the divine feminine spirit for change and healing. O divine feminine spirit, who dwells in our stillness, reveal yourself within so we can bring forth your loving grace. We celebrate your patience. We honor your life-giving force. And we hear your call for change within our universe. With your vital power, move us to love in action, to love one another. With your divine flame, ignite us to work for a kinder, gentler world of peace for everyone. May your wisdom guide us to know you and to give us the courage to live your truth as we go forth in our daily lives this week. Amen.
Surely the presence of God is in this place. I can feel the mighty power and the grace. I can hear the brush of angel wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of God is in this place. And again. Surely the presence of God is in this place. I can feel the mighty power and the grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of God is in this place. So I had a special request to do this next song before Masando's talk, and trust that you might recognize it. There's a freedom within, there's a freedom without. Try to catch the deluge in a paper cup. There's a battle ahead. Many battles are lost, but you'll never see the end of the road while you're traveling with me. Hey now, don't dream it's over. Hey now, when the world comes in, they come to build a wall between us. We know you won't win. Now I'm towing my car. There's a hole in the roof. My possessions are causing me suspicion, but they're no proof. In the paper today, tales of war and of waste, but you turn right over to the TV page. Hey now, don't dream it's over. Hey now, when the world comes in, they come to build a wall between us. We know they won't win. Now I'm walking again to the beat of a drum, and I'm continuing to step into the door of your heart. A lot of words in one line. Only shadows ahead, barely clearing the roof. Get to know the feelings of liberation and release. Hey now, don't dream it's over. Hey now, when the world comes in, they come to build a wall between us. Don't ever let them win. Don't ever let them win. Hey now, don't dream it's over.
Thank you so much, Mailyn. Topic for today is revolutionary love. And it comes from this book by Valerie Kaur, who's one of my favorite authors right now, who's really speaking to the ways in which we navigate this world that we're living in right now. And so we talked a little bit about last week about this world we're living in, and I think this idea and concept of revolutionary love can be really powerful guidance for how we're meeting this world. So let's get into it, right? So what does revolutionary love actually mean? I love etymology. I love looking at the meanings of words. And the word revolution is actually defined as like a fundamental change in the way of thinking or visualizing something, a complete change in paradigm. And it does feel like we are experiencing this kind of revolution in consciousness, like this large shift in the way we're thinking about the world these days. And revolutions in consciousness, right, like they bring change. And they not only bring change to ourselves, but like our whole world, all the systems and institutions that shape our experiences, right? And so when we pair this idea of like a complete paradigm shift with love, like revolutionary love invites us into a way of being, a way of thinking, and a way of feeling that is rooted in our love for one another. It is in the rising of our consciousness that we like get to rise in this revolutionary love for ourselves and for each other. I believe at this moment in time, we are being as a people like who believe in this truth of oneness, called into this idea where we see no strangers, where we see no enemies. So yeah, there's this amazing book by Valerie Kaur. It's her most recent book, and it's called See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love. And in this book, like she writes about sort of where this idea of see no stranger comes from. And she comes from the Sikh faith, or sometimes it's pronounced Sikh, and it comes from the Indian subcontinent, right? We have an amazing relationship with that community over at Mile High Church. We've done some great interfaith events with them. But here's what she writes in her book. She said, my favorite story told to me by my grandfather was our origin story, the story of Guru Nanak, the first teacher of the Sikh faith. 5 centuries ago, the story goes, halfway around the world in a village in Punjab on the Indian subcontinent, there lived a man named Nanak. He was deeply troubled by the violence around him, Hindus and Muslims in turmoil. One day, he disappeared on the bank of a river for 3 days. People thought he was dead, drowned. But Nanak emerged on the third day with a vision of oneness, Ik Onkar, the oneness of humanity and the world. The vision threw him into a state of ecstatic wonder. Okay, cool. Vismad. And he began singing songs of devotion called Shabads, praising the divine within him and around him. In other words, right, he was in love. Love made him see with new eyes. Everyone around him was a part of him that he did not yet know. He said, I see no stranger. I see no enemy. Guru Nanak taught us all that we could see the world in this way. Like there's this voice inside of us called How Mai that names itself as separate from me and you. It resides in the bowl that holds our individual consciousness, but separateness is an illusion. When we quiet the chatter in our heads through music or meditation or recitation or song, the boundaries begin to disappear. The bowl breaks. For a moment, we taste the truth sweet as nectar. We are a part of one another. Joy rushes in. Long after the moment passes, we can choose to remember the truth of our interconnectedness, that we belong to one another. Like we can choose to see no stranger. I love this story. I love the ways in which it calls out how we can separate ourselves from one another. And yet it also talks about how there is something within us that calls to a deeper place that can crack that separation that comes with that illusion to the sweetness of this like actual truth that we are all one, that we always are living in a state of oneness, and we can quiet our minds long enough to begin the practice of seeing no stranger, of being in this place of like actual revolutionary love. So I want to talk today about how we can cultivate this practice of revolutionary love and seeing no stranger and seeing no enemy, and then explore what type of lens, like what a belief in oneness actually like calls forth from us, what it asks of us, right? Because seeing no stranger, seeing no enemy, it sounds great, right? Like, how do we actually do that? Carr writes in her book, seeing no stranger begins in wonder. It is to look upon the face of anyone and choose to say, you are a part of me I do not yet know. Wonder is this wellspring for love. Who we wonder about determines whose stories we hear and whose joy and pain we share. Those we grieve with, those we sit with and weep with, are ultimately those we organize with and advocate for. When a critical mass of people come together to wonder about one another, to grieve with one another, and fight with and for one another, we begin to build the solidarity needed for collective liberation and transformation, a solidarity that's rooted in love. Like, who are we paying attention to? Who are we wondering about? Whose stories are we hearing? Who are we allowing ourselves to celebrate with? Are we willing to grieve with those who are different from us? Am I willing to grieve with someone who feels like my enemy? Am I actually brave enough to do this? Right? Like this past week, we hit the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's death. I don't think any of us could have known the far-reaching impact that his life and the protests that were born from the tragic and unjust way that life was taken from him too early. I don't think we ever could have imagined the kind of impact that would have on us, on the United States, but also for the world. You know, for some, this kind of tragedy was all too familiar with this kind of event and police brutality happening in their own communities far too often. And perhaps for others, this kind of tragedy came as a shock, right? It wasn't the first time that this kind of case made it onto the public scene. It wasn't the first time there was a video of a police shooting. But the protests that followed, right, seemed to like wake up the conscience of our country and our world in a very powerful way. There are protests taking part in over 50 countries and almost every continent, with the exception of Antarctica, although maybe some penguins ordered some protests we didn't know about. So what was like different about this time? I'm not sure we'll ever fully know, but based on some of the conversations I've had, like the social media and like some of the people that I follow on Twitter, I think there were simply enough people that made the decision to, or perhaps there's like this critical mass of people that heard each other's stories, right? Perhaps we were just like living in this global pandemic and we were slowed down enough. We were in quarantine, that the normal grind of business and distraction and free from that business and distraction, that many were able just to be in a state of wonder long enough to actually share in the pain, to grieve with, and to feel the myriad emotions that arise from injustice, right? And that make us want to learn and to grow and to ultimately make right. Like, it really does feel, at least to me, that we are having in this country like a real reckoning around race in this very powerful way. And it feels like an opportunity for a deeper healing to take place. Like a healing of the ways in which these inherited systems rooted in inequity can like actually change and grow and evolve and transform into systems that like actually work for everyone. Can heal the ways in which we allow members of society to die at the hands of police. Healing the ways in which we can be driven apart in these conversations out of defensiveness or anger, and instead like root ourselves in something deeper, in compassion, in love, in the willingness to see, you know, like having those ears to hear, like having that heart to feel. And like at the root of all this, at the center of all this entire movement that's happening right now, what it feels like, at least to me, is that it's rooted in love. Like, or it could be, right? A kind of revolutionary love that brings us closer together through just simply standing in wonder of one another, in genuine openness and exchange. It feels like we are being called to like walk through the world in this way as we are coming out of this pandemic. And though it may all feel new and the pace of change like may feel overwhelming at times, it's also like I take comfort in knowing like that it's also rooted in something ancient of days, like in a way of being that has been around since the beginning of time. She drops some serious knowledge about this in the ancient wisdom that comes through the many faith traditions. And what I love about Unity is that we honor all faith traditions in this path. And so she says in her book, it is easy to wonder about the internal life of the people that are closest to us. It's much harder to wonder about people and about the internal life of folks that feel like strangers or outsiders. But when we choose to wonder about people we don't know, when we imagine their lives and when we listen to their stories, we begin to expand the circle of those we see as a part of us. We prepare ourselves to love beyond what evolution requires. The call to love beyond our own flesh and blood is actually ancient. It echoes down to us on the lips of indigenous leaders, spiritual teachers, and social reformers through the centuries. Guru Nanak called us to see no stranger. The Buddha to practice unending compassion. Abraham to open our tent to all. Jesus to love all neighbors. Muhammad to take in the orphan. Mirabai to love without limit. Right? They all expanded the circle of who counts as one of us, and therefore who is worthy of our care and concern. These teachings were rooted in the linguistic, cultural, and spiritual context of their time, but they spoke of a common vision of our interconnectedness and our interdependence. It is the ancient Sanskrit truth that we can look upon anyone or anything and say, Tattvam Asi, like I am that. It is the African philosophy, Ubuntu, I am because you are. It is the Mayan precept in Lakesh, you are my other me. I find myself like wondering what this means for my own life. Like what does believing in oneness actually ask of me, right? Like what does it ask of all of us? It's this pretty radical idea that we're all connected. It goes to the very root, and I feel like it challenges my ideas of separation that I just create all the time. So what does like this gorgeous, difficult, like, radical belief in oneness ask of us as spiritual beings? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is correcting everything that stands against love. Oneness, like Seeing no stranger doesn't keep us complacent in a removed state of like niceness and turning away from the world. I think it actually asks us to look at the hard things, right? To empathize with the pain of others and to make this power of love more real in our world in individual and collective ways. I realize like this isn't easy. There are real people and groups who seek to strip others of their rights, that seek to reserve rights only for some that fall into like some particular social construct or norm. Perhaps these individuals and groups seek to strip you and your family of your rights because of your identity. Like, this is not easy to contend with. Let's be real about that. But what do we do to honestly feel into our oneness with people who have essentially declared themselves our enemy? Like, is there a way to acknowledge the truth of this division while also living into our oneness? Kaur says in her book, an opponent is any person whose beliefs, words, or actions causes violence, injustice, or harm. The word enemy implies permanence, but opponent is more fluid. We have a range of opponents at any given time, distant and near. Even the people closest to us can become our opponents for a moment. It is daring to put all these people in one big category, but it is useful. For whether our opponents are political or personal, persistent or fleeting, we can practice tending the wound. Ours, and if it is safe, theirs as well. We can rage in safe containers to process our pain, listen to understand the contexts that enable our opponents to cause harm, and use that information to reimagine cultures and institutions that protect dignity for all of us. Tending the wound is not only moral but strategic. It is the labor of remaking the world. To live in a state of oneness that's authentic, we have to acknowledge that we have at any given moment opponents. Like, we're not impermeable to that. We are woundable. Like, we're vulnerable beings. But here's the thing, we are also healers. We are also brave warriors, and it is necessary to tend to the wounds that come with being human. We can acknowledge the experience of division and pain and tend to the wound and still leave room not only for our own healing, but the healing of those who we've considered to be our opponent, right? I appreciate that Kaur gives us this word other than enemy. As she says, enemy is more permanent. It's the division that does not allow us to move or heal. Opponent acknowledges that in this world, we will sometimes harm each other, yet there is room to labor in service of remaking the world. Brene Brown writes something that feels resonant to this experience of co-creating oneness. She says, if we zoom way out and take a wide-angle shot of our world that's increasingly defined by 24-hour news, politics, and social media, we see a whole lot of hatred. We see posturing, we see name-calling, and people trading humiliations. We see politicians making laws that their own resources will exempt them from having to follow, and behaving in ways that would cost most of us our jobs, our families, and our dignity. On social media, we see opinions disembodied from accountability, truth, and worst of all, identity. But when we zoom in, right, when we zoom in on our own life, the picture changes from a distant, raging, and atrophying heart to the beating pulse of our everyday existence. When we feel love and we know pain, we feel hope and we know struggle. We see beauty and we survive trauma. We don't all have the protection of privilege and the luxury of anonymity. We're trying to build connected and loving lives while we pack lunches, drive carpools, go to jobs, and push into as many moments of joy as we can. I love this idea of like zooming in, that we can be in the here and now of it all. It asks us to be present to both the beauty and to the pain, the anger and the confusion, the sacred and the mundane, so that it all can wake us up to our truth of oneness, so that we all can be with each other in the reality of our pain, so that we can allow that long arc of justice to bend toward the very actions that come from compassion, from our wonder, and from our willingness to be conduits for justice and for love and for this shared identity in God. So seeing no stranger and seeing no enemy, like revolutionary love is not a practice confined to the walls of a monastery, or even a prayer space in our own homes. It's something that we get to do every day, in every situation. And what's more, it helps us. It's a deeply nurturing act. It can become a healing balm that can lead to a greater commitment to not only care for others, but to also deeply engage in care for ourselves. Seeing no stranger is an act of caring for ourselves because we are intricately connected to everybody else. Like seeing no stranger, seeing no enemy is actually caring for ourselves. So that can lead to a deeper commitment for our own self-care. Self-care is seeing no stranger and seeing no enemy. So, friends, as we close today, as we are really feeling into the fact that we are living in this time of great transformation, I invite us to remember there's so much good that is seeking to be birthed into the world right now. As we are finishing up this series on the divine feminine, I think we get to take that position of the midwife, right? We can invite ourselves and others to breathe into all of the real pain and discomfort that comes with this particular time and encourage ourselves to push through it all, to give birth within ourselves and into the world, a vision that I think we are all holding for a more kind, a more just, and a more inclusive world that is big enough and wide enough to hold us all in the great equanimity of the divine. We get to be healers. We get to be those who forgive, those who care for their wounds deeply enough to become reconcilers, and ones who do not run away from the challenges of this time, but breathe and push through those challenges to give birth to something new. Here and now, right where we are, this is where it starts. This is where it begins. And this is where all of life takes place. So let's ground all of this in some prayer before we turn it back over to Mailyn and Carolyn, who's going to be sharing a song with us. So I invite us, whether we're here in this room or we're watching this online, just to sink deeply into that place within us that is able to break this bowl of separation. We all have a tendency and an urge to see ourselves as separate and therefore to protect ourselves, to guard ourselves. And yet when we just allow that bowl to break and we allow the light that's from within to shine through the cracks, begin to realize that that light that begins to emerge is the same light that's emanating from each and every person and each and every being on this planet, how good it is to come into a remembrance of this light and to feel that light merge with every single other light on this planet. And it is from that place we begin to care for that light, to nurture that light, to allow that light to come more fully into the world and more fully into every corner of our own being so that we can heal, so that anything that seeks to shield itself from that light can begin to heal, and that those same wounds that we see out manifest in the world, that those too can become a place of healing through that healing balm of light. So I just give thanks for this time. I give thanks for the way that it is calling us forth into a deeper remembrance of our oneness. I give thanks for the ways in which this pandemic has called forth a deeper place and intimacy with that light within. And I give thanks for all of the ways that we are coming back together, as awkward as it can feel. We can come into this remembrance that truly, everything is unfolding for a higher purpose. And so we just give ourselves to that as we feel into this beautiful world that is calling for more love and more light and more healing in every moment. So knowing that we are a part of that, knowing that we are a part of that healing, we simply let it be, and we let it be so. And so it is. Oh yes, now we do the offering blessing before we go into the music. Apologize for that. So whether you're online and you're doing this from home, I think if you're in the room, There's some baskets at the back where you can put in physical donations, but I think we've all really gotten used to all the different ways that we can give. But I just invite you to take whatever you have to give and hold it over your heart and say this offering blessing with us. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is.
There's a wolf that preys on a world that strays so far from the garden. And just like your own, every heart you know seems cold and hardened. You may not have the stage, but you still have a voice. You may not have the strength, but if you have a choice, I dare you to love. I dare you to love. Even if you're hurt and you can only see the worst, even if you think it's not enough, I dare you to love. We're all full of hope, trying to stay afloat, trying to save one another. People let you drown 'cause they don't know how to stay above the water. When they're too broken to know what they've put you through. Do the only thing that you'd want done to you. I dare you to love. I dare you to love. Even if you're hurt and you can only see the worst, even if you think it's not enough, oh, I dare you to love. You may not have the stage, but you still have a voice. You may not have the strength, but if you have a choice, I dare you to love. I dare you to love. Even if you're hurt and you can only see the worst, even if you think it's not enough, oh, I dare you to love. I dare you. Oh, I dare you to love.
Now we just offer a children's blessing. And now we offer a blessing for the children of our community and the world. You are loved, special, and important. We see you and bless the divine being that you are. So let us close with the prayer of protection, and the words are up here on the screen. The light of God surrounds us. I am that light. The love of God enfolds us. I am that love. The power of God protects us. I am that power. The presence of God watches over us. I am that presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Go in power and go in peace.
You may not have the stage, but you still have a voice. You may not have the strength, but if you have a choice, I dare you to love. I dare you to love. Even if you're hurt and you can only see the worst, even if you think it's not enough, I dare